I did a video on this earlier on in the week, but it was surprisingly a decent quality of fighter fighting last night on a Thursday night. I guess it's guys wanting to get some action in before Christmas, but real busy global amount of boxing last night. For me, perhaps the most interesting fight, and the one I'll talk about in the most length, was Antonio Tarver versus Jonathan Banks. Two guys who have had levels of success in lower divisions fighting at heavyweight. I was surprised by the result in this one. I was quite strong that Jonathan Banks would win the fight. I thought Tarver at 46, looking like he was carrying quite a bit of load on him. I thought Banks would be fresher. Banks would have had access to the top quality sparring and training with the Klitschko camp. I thought Banks would get the job done, but boy was I wrong. Antonio Tarver wins by stoppage in the 7th round, and from my eyes pretty much ends Jonathan Banks' career as a boxer. The guy's training Vladimir Klitschko. He's probably earning more money for doing that job than he is boxing himself. If you're losing to a 46-year-old Antonio Tarver, it's hard to see you being competitive in the division. Fair play to Tarver. I thought he did really well, especially given his age. He pretty much won every single round ahead of the 7th round stoppage. We've had issues with Banks before, that his work rate and that his output is just low, and last night it was pretty woeful, to be honest. He just wasn't throwing enough punches. He was allowing Tarver to dominate. And to be fair, Tarver showed that he still had some skills in there. Not only did he have skills technically, he's able to get his jab off, control the pace of the fight, but he also seemed to have physical attributes. He seemed to be faster. He seemed to hit harder. And, clearly he carries a bit of power. Jonathan Banks, I know he's been dropped by Seth Mitchell, once or twice, but he isn't a guy who's just getting knocked spark out left, right and centre. He's a credible heavyweight contender, Jonathan Banks. I would previously have considered him a, top 30 heavyweight maybe, but certainly not after last night. Antonio Tarver really looked a class above, and when it got to the 7th round and Tarver stepped on the gas, Tarver was hitting him with his big left hand, hurting him. You could see Banks was on unsteady legs, and Tarver got all over him. Really impressive with how quick and how devastating Tarver was at the finish. He looked like he did have quite a bit left, and he's still fast and he still hits hard even at heavyweight, and even with that gut on him. I mean, to be honest, you could see Antonio Tarver making a few waves in the heavyweight division last night. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't a world-class performance. I'm not thinking afterwards that he's going to be a heavyweight champion or anything like that. But I certainly think there may be some big fights in the heavyweight division for Tarver. And if we look at the American scene, you've got guys like Deontay Wilder, Bryant Jennings. These are guys on the verge of fighting for world titles. But you've got a lot of guys at the top of the American scene who are still relatively unproven. And a guy with the ring experience of Tarver, who still maintains his speed and power, could be a threat to these guys. He really could. There was a lot to like about it, and it sort of combined the experience and the ring savvy with sort of quite explosiveness at times, especially towards the end of the fight. As I say, it was against a very low volume, seemingly unmotivated Jonathan Banks. Maybe he's put more effort into training Klitschko than training himself, and that perhaps was evident in this fight. But I was really impressed by Tarver. He overperformed what I thought he was going to, and he actually showed that he had a bit of power at heavyweight, so quite a lot to like from that performance. And obviously Tarver's 46. If he's going to do anything in the heavyweight division, it's got to be sooner rather than later. So we'll see who he fights next. Hopefully he can get a big name. Maybe he could fight someone like Shannon Briggs. I'm sure that would spark interest. Elsewhere, Alexander Utinov fought Chauncey Welliver in Russia. I know Lucas Brown got the job done early against Welliver, but this one went the distance, went 8 rounds. I didn't see the fight, but reports are that Utinov pretty much dominated the entire fight at the end of his jab, hurt Welliver a few times, dropped him in the 5th round, and it was quite a composed, controlling performance. I guess the problem for Utinov is he's 38 now, and he's been out of the ring for 13 months before this fight, so he needs to stay busy. He needs to fight a decent level of opponent, and if he wants the world title shots and to move up the rankings, he's got to be facing bigger names. I know there's been talks about him fighting Kimbo Slice. I know there's been talks about him fighting Tyson Fury. One of those is a credible heavyweight competitor. I think Utinov will be in a fight in 2015 of some note. I can see him being brought in as an opponent like he was against Kubrat Pulev, and I think he's got one more chance. If he can get a fight with Tyson Fury, there's always scope if you can cause an upset, and I don't think he will be able to, but if you can cause an upset, you'll get put in a good spot. I mean, with Utinov, the concern is that he's too plodding, too one-paced, too one-dimensional. He's not explosive enough. He's more of a sort of big jabber, and I'd like to see more versatility to him than that to consider him a serious threat at heavyweight. But nonetheless, sounds like he did a professional job on Welliver. Austin Trout won last night by stoppage. The opponent, who I know is respectable, I won't even try and pronounce his surname because I'll get that wrong, but it's good to see Austin Trout back in the win column. Trout's a guy I rate quite highly. Let's not forget, this is a guy who relatively recently beat Miguel Cotto, who just destroyed Sergio Martinez. This is a guy who a lot of people believed beat Canelo Alvarez. Sure, he got out sort of skilled by Erislandy Lara, but this is a guy who beat Cotto and arguably beat Canelo, two of the biggest names in the sport. Austin Trout should not be forgotten and could cause a lot of trouble for a lot of fighters at light middleweight. Good to see him back in the win column. He's a good fighter. Finally, Sergio Mora, who we may remember from winning the first series of the Contender. He won in an 8-rounder against an opponent with a losing record. Mora got dropped in the fight, I believe. I didn't watch the fight, but just from reports. And you've got to wonder with Sergio Mora, if you're getting dropped by opponents with losing records, and if you're getting in tough 8-round fights with these kind of guys, whether the writing's on the wall. Let me know your thoughts on the fight. Were you impressed by Antonio Tarver? Were you impressed by Utinov, Austin Trout, etc.? Where do you want to see Tarver go from here? Is it time to call it a day for Jonathan Banks? Let me know your thoughts. Thanks for watching.